in Cabbage Town. In a minute, we're going to be getting to a whole lots of maps and ideas and lots of other very concrete solutions. But before we begin, one thing I wanted to sort of bring up is that we brought a model that we prepared for our presentation. And it's an abstract model. It's an abstract model because a lot of our solutions are very, very concrete. But we've always had a really strong idea of what our theme was. And it's about inclusivity and it's about accessibility. And we prepared just this brief thing that Nina is going to be holding up just for a second, because we thought that before we start talking about the concrete and reality of things about inclusivity and accessibility, that we would have this one thing that we use to represent how the way we've been seeing the whole project. And you hold that up a little bit higher. But now we can begin properly. Like I said, we were talking about Cabbage Town. We called our project Connection in the City. And when a lot of people, when you ask them about what they think about Cabbage Town, the first thing that always comes to mind are the heritage buildings. They always talk about the beautiful tree-lined streets with the Victorian homes. And of course, the next things that often comes to mind are the animals in the Riverdale farm, traveling out, taking walks in the beautiful necropolis, the community on Parliament Street. And another thing that often comes up when people talk about Cabbage Town is that it has an interesting sense of isolation in the community. It's quite unique in that way. And one of the reasons that that comes up is because while it's a beautiful neighborhood, on four sides it's neighbored by either three not particularly well-off neighborhoods. It's got St. Jamestown to the north, Regent Park to the south, Sherburne Street to the west, and on the east it's almost completely cut off by the Don Valley Parkway. And so it has a very unique sense of isolation, and that really began to drive what our theories and the solutions that we began to develop for our project.
So I would like to talk about the imagery here. As you can see, the shaded green part is the Cabbage Town. And as you know, that the Cabbage Town is going to be located at the Don Valley Parkway over here, and right by the Wesley Street. This was the design that was given to us along Cabbage Town. And I would like to show the one-way street. Over here, you can see that there's a lot of one-way street over here, which can cause like a lot of problems to find parking going around, maybe cause congestion along Parliament Street. And then the next one will be showing the transit of the DTC. The one that is on the dash now is showing that is the bus route over here, and then over here this will be the streetcar that comes along. And for the cyclists, that is the only nearest cyclist road, which is on Sherburne, which is the nearest to Cabbage Town.
So when you look at the traffic flow of the neighborhood, and you know a bit about the history and the neighborhood and the communities in which it's located, you can come to some conclusions. Cabbage Town is a very desirable location. It has a lot of things to offer. People refer to it as like a small town in a big city. But it also has very little parking, and that's a really big problem. The side streets make it impossible. The Victorian homes were built before anybody ever had driveways or garages, and there's all the street parking is taken. There's parking on Parliament Street, but it's also quite often in use. And what this led to us to think about was that this lack of parking really does limit access to this desirable place. The lack of access means that it's not inclusive. And especially to not just, at least not inclusive for people who aren't in an immediate walking distance from the area. And that's really what started to drive our project. So when we started thinking about this, we started thinking about personas. The first person that came to mind was a resident of Cabbage Town. And this man is a resident of Cabbage Town. First of all, he's not very happy about the number of cars that drive through his street every day. To get those speed bumps on every one of those streets, and according to the City of Toronto, to give a street a speed bump, at least 1,000 cars have to go by on a single day. So he's not very happy about that. But beyond that, his name is Henry, by the way. He's a very social guy. And when he goes out on Parliament Street on a Sunday afternoon, he wants to go pick up some bread at the local bakery. And when he walks to that bakery, it's at the further northern part of Parliament Street. And there's not much seating in there. And one of the things he always finds is that despite how much he wants to have a chance to talk with his neighbors and really enjoy that community feeling of Parliament Street, he's unable and just turns home afterwards with his muffins. The next person we have is Sally. And Sally works in Cabbage Town, but she doesn't live there. She lives in Regent Park. She works at a restaurant at the northern end of Parliament Street, and she takes the bus, the short route home, because she gets off at the end of the night. She has to cross the street in between Winchester and Wellesley, and she has to do it by jaywalking. And she always waits at the bus stops, which are always, and all the bus stops in the area are quite plain. And while she says that she loves Cabbagetown, she never feels like it's really her own community. The last group are the Wilson family. And the Wilson family live in North York. They live nowhere near there. However, they once brought their kids to Riverdale Farm, and they were hoping to have a very nice day. But in the end, they spent 15 minutes trying to find parking. They had to walk 10 minutes to get there. They haven't been back since.
So our proposal for Cabbagetown would be to add a parking lot, also a crosswalk, a bus shelter, and a parklet. And the parklet is supposed to be a seating arrangement on Parliament Street, so allow to bring some customers to come in by improving business.
That's me first.
Yeah.
All right, so we're talking about parking here, and we're absolutely aware of all the negative associations as soon as we said that we want to put in a parking lot. We know, and we know that it's not a sexy solution at all, but we think it's the right one. Because right now, there's a huge lack of parking. It's disruptive to the locals, and it really, really cuts off just about anybody who can't walk there from the community, from the rest of this really fabulous neighborhood. But before we did that, we definitely wanted to make sure that whatever solution we came up with was the least intrusive. That's what we've developed is a single-story structure, and the parking is below ground. We've done a model of the area, and it also includes a rooftop garden, and it has. We also have designs about how it's not going to intrude on traffic. We're going to be placing it on Gerrard Street, on the north side of it, just east of Parliament. It's located right now. This is an empty lot, and building 2 floors down, we know that it can accommodate just about 200 parking spots, and it's been built back from the road. And we've also specifically, to think about how it interacts with pedestrians, we've made sure that the cars access it. There's a space like this where people are not immediately going straight onto the sidewalk, so pedestrians have access for it, and it can also slow traffic that way. And another thing about the building is that it's going to be a multi-purpose building. We looked at some areas in the neighborhood where there are different kinds of needs that would be available. And some of the things that we're proposing to include in this multi-purpose building, and I'm going to go back a slide here. One of them is a cafe. The other one is a local produce store, specifically based on maybe some of the community gardens in Riverdale Park. And the other one is a food bank, which would serve the community, especially Regent Park, and a cafeteria space. None of these are set in stone, but these are all things that, having looked at the business scenario, would all be possible things to use on the first floor of this building, so it isn't just a building devoted to parking.
So the proposed silent crosswalk, we had many ideas like how to integrate it with Victorian houses. So we had some ideas of how we could design the pavement for it. But the main idea for the crosswalk was to have it to be accessibility or a universal design for everyone to use. And also to make sure it could be a buffer along the intersection street. And these were some of the ideas that we were trying to come up for the bus stop. As you can see, there was many multiple designs that we were trying to come up with, but eventually we decided to go with something like this, with the proposed bus stop. Since the bus kept coming by so slow, we were planning to install heating on top of the roof of the bus stop over here, since it's a long wait. Also, this would be the temporary seating arrangement. This is basically having a person sitting on this parquet and having a garden, so people can come in and socialize, probably be more engaging with the community.
When we were putting these together, we looked at some specific areas all along Parliament Street. And what was really important to us was that, because we've been talking about accessibility and inclusiveness, this isn't just in that center part of Parliament Street that has much more business activity, and it generally serves the areas more associated with Cabbagetown rather than the parts in the north, which are part of much more closer to the St. James community. And what we found was that we found 4 places all along Parliament Street, from the very bottom near Gerrard to the top at Wellesley, that would all be really well served by this. Only 4 parking spaces are going to be taken away on Parliament Street, and they're meant to be temporary and only seasonal. They include seating and planter in the back. So when we think about this and the scenarios that they and the personas that we talked about in the beginning, we thought about how this could help people. First of all, we thought about the Wilson family, who are drivers here, and immediately we thought about them when we thought about the parking structure. They're able to park, and it's important. I know and what it means is that they get to take their family to the park. They're not going to be weaving through the streets to be able to find that parking, and it makes it accessible for them and less inconvenient for others. When it comes to the bus stop, someone who's waiting at the bus can have an easier way to cross the street to get to the bus stop and have a better feeling while they're waiting for it. And lastly, we're talking about a resident, someone who probably isn't that happy about the parking lot being built. In this case, not only does he have the better seating in the area, it's something that beautifies his neighborhood too. And one thing we have before we end is that we have put together a video. When we were thinking about that scenario, we thought about the Wilson family again, and we just wanted to put together the route they'd take and some of the stops along their way.